My husband drugged me for his illegitimate child. After I left, he went mad. Married for 6 years, on Ethan's birthday I, who had miscarried 6 times, was once again diagnosed as pregnant. Hard to contain my excitement, I wanted to tell Ethan the good news, but he drugged me and sent me to the bed of a business partner for the whole night. The next day I staggered home, clutching my belly in sharp pain, my clothes and sheets stained with blood. I heard Ethan and Bella's suppressed, intimate gasps. "Ethan, you actually sent the pregnant Sophia to that old man's bed just so our son will be the sole heir. He doesn't even know how to repay you, aren't you worried?" Bella cooed, her voice saccharine and seductive. "Fool, I don't need his repayment. I'd do all this willingly. As for Sophia, at worst I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to her, that's the fate she deserves." I stood in the doorway, listening to their conversation, my whole body trembling, my mind a blank, suddenly swallowed by fear and helplessness. Tears spilled uncontrollably from my eyes. I shakily raised my hand and clamped it over my mouth to stop myself from crying out. At that moment, Bella's laughter drifted through the room, followed by suggestive gasps. "Aren't you afraid of making Sophia sad? This is her 7th pregnancy, you know. I will never allow a murderer to give birth to a bastard. Our son is the only one worthy of inheriting my wealth. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made her take abortion pills 6 times. I stared in stunned disbelief, tears streaming, the despair and collapse inside me threatening to destroy me completely. Summoning the last of my strength, I pushed open the door that felt like it was suffocating me. The two of them were entwined, naked. Ethan's wandering hands roamed over Bella's softness, driven by desire. At the moment they kissed, they heard the noise at the door. Ethan's expression was a spectacle, his eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossed them. He shoved Bella aside so abruptly she cried out in pain. Then he looked at me at the doorway, my face streaked with tears, with utter scorn. My voice was hoarse as I choked out questions. "Ethan, why are you doing this to me? Do you hate me that much? I'm carrying your child, your sister wasn't the one who pushed." "Enough. Sophia, if you have time to waste on this nonsense, you might as well hurry to the hospital and get that bastard taken care of. Your blood has dirted my house." My world had already collapsed. Each of Ethan's words was like a knife driven into my heart. I was so hurt I couldn't put it into words, and could only let the tears flow, sinking into despair and pain. I felt like the baby inside me was about to fall out. The pain in my lower abdomen made me break out in a sweat. That desperate, wrenching agony as if something was trying to tear away from my body pushed me to the edge. I propped my weak body against the doorframe, stubbornly continuing to speak. "Ethan, I'm your wife. For this woman you sent me into another man's bed. How can you be so cruel? Our child is gone. You killed our baby." I screamed at him in collapse. Beside him, Bella rubbed her arm and used a blanket to cover herself, but her expression showed not a flicker of guilt at being caught in the act. "Ethan and I have mutual feelings. If you hadn't stuck your foot in the door, it should have been me marrying Ethan, not you, Sophia. You're playing the weak, pitiable woman here just to make Ethan feel sorry for you, aren't you? But have you forgotten what you did before? You think you can wash your hands of it with a few words. Let me tell you, Ethan isn't about to fall for your act." As she spoke, Bella coquettishly pressed herself against Ethan. At that moment his phone rang. He glanced down and his eyes were full of contempt. "Sophia, who are you putting on this humiliated act for? Look at this. President Wang sent me a video of you two in bed. Look at how slutty you are, enjoying it, I'd say. I think you liked it. You have the nerve to come back and accuse me after seducing another man behind my back?" I clutched the fabric over my belly so hard, and with my emotions frayed, my body could no longer hold up. I slid down and fell into unconsciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying on a hospital bed. The pain on the back of my hand brought me instantly to alertness, and I hurriedly felt my flat abdomen over and over to reassure myself. A young nurse came in to change my foredrip, her eyes full of sympathy. Nurse, where is my baby? How is the baby? The nurse stopped, troubled, finding it hard to speak. Just then, my mother-in-law walked into the ward carrying a basket of fruit and urged the nurse to leave quickly. What's there to ask, Sophia? I never expected it, you look so honest and proper, but you've been seducing men behind my son's back. If that bastard in your belly is gone, then good riddance. Don't act like you're heartbroken here. At that moment, Ethan came in holding a lunchbox. My son's really unlucky, marrying a jinx like you. As soon as my mother-in-law finished, she received a warning look from Ethan and sat down sulkily, displeased. Drink your porridge first, your health matters. Seeing his indifferent, hands-off coldness, I suddenly overturned the bowl of porridge in Ethan's hands onto the floor and, my emotions running high, shouted loudly. Ethan! Our baby is gone. Are you happy now? You can officially bring your illegitimate child into the family. Let's get a divorce right now, I'll make room for Bella. Ethan froze, he silently crouched and picked up the shattered pieces of bowl, without humiliation or insult. But my mother-in-law, seeing her son treated like this, grew suddenly enraged. She strode up to me, disregarding my frail state, and slapped me across the face. Filthy bitch, you cuckolded my son, and now you've had your uterus removed because of an ectopic pregnancy, that's your retribution. Now that another woman is willing to bear children for my son, you should have moved out long ago. I stared at them, wide-eyed and unbelieving, my mind blank. Did I hear that right? My uterus had been removed. Mom, I won't divorce her. My child will call her mother in the future. Whatever happened before, no one is to mention it again. Ethan's voice was low and cold, as icy as an executioner. I closed my eyes in despair and refused to look at him anymore. In this life, I could never be a mother again. The man who used to profess his love for me sounded like a demon in that moment. That shattered bowl of thin congee severed every lingering tie I had to Ethan. He used to say, on the anniversary of our year together, that he wanted to have 2 children with me, one like me, one like him. In the end, it all dissolved into nothing. Poor thing, no uterus, no chance to be a mother in this life. Yeah, they just brought her in covered in blood. I really don't know how her man takes care of her. He looks handsome, but you can't choose a husband by looks alone. I drove Ethan and his mother out of the ward, and as I listened to the nurses gossiping in the hallway, I nearly collapsed. I couldn't accept this reality. I don't know how long had passed before I dialed a number. Uncle, about moving abroad like you mentioned before, I'm willing to go. After hanging up, I immediately blocked all of Ethan's contact info, including that deep-colored gem ring on his ring finger. Then I returned to the small apartment I had bought before the marriage. The heating had been shut off, and the place felt damp and chilly. I wrapped the blanket tightly around me, but my heart trembled with cold. Half asleep, I drifted through the night until a strange noise came from the door. Sophia. Open the door. I know you're home, don't you know to take care of yourself? You sneaked out of the hospital, come out. The door was being slammed over and over, and soon the neighbors' complaints echoed down the stairwell. The moment I opened the door, Ethan's expression was agitated. The dark bruising under his eyes was plainly visible and made me suspect he hadn't slept at all that night. But then I thought, how could that be possible? I couldn't help but mock myself for being sentimental. Ethan frowned, anger in his eyes as he grabbed my arm, clearly upset. Have you lost your mind? Sophia, how could you leave the hospital without telling the doctors? What else are you capable of? I shook his hand off and took out the divorce papers I'd printed overnight. Ethan, why are you putting on this worried act now? Between us, all that stands in the way is this one agreement. Ethan's expression stilled for a moment. He frowned and tore the divorce papers to shreds, grinding his teeth and glaring at me viciously. Divorce? Sophia, you've lost 7 children and your womb, but my sister, she'll forever be 15. We've both lost the most precious things, that makes it even. Let's put the past behind us and live our lives properly from now on. Put the past behind us? Hearing that, I felt despair sweep over me, a deep sense of powerlessness hollowing me out. At that moment Ethan's phone rang. It was Bella. I don't know what she said, but Ethan hurriedly turned and opened the door to leave, throwing me a tense glance as he went and leaving a single line, "Think it over yourself." I gave a bitter smile at the closed door, the pain pressing down so hard I could hardly breathe. My phone vibrated with a message. "Sophia, the kitten smells so good. Wasn't this the one Ethan gave you? So cute." Bella had sent me a video, my Boo-Boo placed in a pot, the water boiling, Boo-Boo's weak head drooping over the rim. I couldn't believe such cruelty. Then Bella provocatively sent me a voice message. "I know Ethan was just by your side. See, one phone call from me and he raced right back to me. Ethan says, you treat Boo-Boo like your own child, so I'll make you feel the pain of losing everything." About half an hour later, Bella sent me another video. In the video, Ethan rushed home, saw Bella sitting on the couch sobbing in fear, and held her tightly, whispering comforts. He then went to the kitchen and looked at Boo-Boo, which had been cooked. "I'm sorry, Ethan, I wasn't watching Boo-Boo properly. I was going to make myself some noodles, but I didn't expect it would jump into the pot. It's my fault." This was Sophia's only solace. Ethan gave no reaction, holding Bella and soothing her gently. "It's just a cat. If it's dead, it's dead. Your safety is what matters." Hearing Ethan's words in the video made me tremble with anger. I called him at once. "Ethan, do you still have a heart? Boo-Boo was a living being, it used to be a bond between us. How can you be so cold?" Ethan's indifferent voice came through. "So what? As long as Bella is okay. It's only the life of an animal, can that be more important than a person's safety? Learn to tell what's important. Stop making such an unreasonable fuss." I swallowed my pain and, my voice choked, told him, but Boo-Boo was clearly killed by Bella. Just now, she sent me the video herself. Can't you see that? You know Boo-Boo would never go into the kitchen. Ethan was silent for a moment, then sneered. An animal, how could it possibly never go into the kitchen forever? Sophia, don't hold such a grudge against Bella, blaming everything on her. I don't like you acting this way. Ethan coldly hung up, leaving only the harsh beeps in his ear. When we first adopted this cat together, he had stroked its small head with eyes full of tenderness and said, "The cat is so clingy, just like me." When Boo-Boo fell ill, he ran to several veterinary clinics in the middle of the night, holding Boo-Boo tightly and saying, "Daddy won't give up on you." But now Boo-Boo has grown up, and Ethan has broken his promise. Tears kept sliding down my face as I looked at those once adorable photos of Boo-Boo, and I finally understood, the relationship between Ethan and me really was over. My phone vibrated on the bed, it was Uncle calling. "Hello, Uncle. Your brother is coming home to pick you up tomorrow. Remember to get your passport and documents in order. Soon our family will be reunited." Uncle's excitement was unmistakable over the phone. Since Father died, Uncle had been the person who cared for me the most. When I was in school he worried about me going alone, so he had my brother, who is a year older, transferred to our school. He stayed with me until I graduated from university, and only had to go abroad because of business. Early the next morning, my brother knocked on my door. He looked exhausted, yawning as he entered. He kicked off his shoes and flopped onto my bed. "I'm wiped out from the flight. I'll nap to adjust to the time difference, make yourself at home." Watching him sprawled across my bed so unabashedly, I could only shake my head helplessly and turn to go to the kitchen. That afternoon my brother suggested I take him sightseeing since he hadn't been back in years and would be leaving in a couple of days, buy some of his favorite snacks to take along, and visit his favorite restaurant. What I didn't expect was to run into Ethan there. Bella stood at his side, and Ethan glared at my brother with full-on fury, his words dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't even know, you were so eager you went after another man. Do the wild men who used to drive you to and from school know you betrayed them? My brother slammed down the cutlery in his hands, rose up, and grabbed Ethan's collar viciously. Watch your mouth. Who are you calling a wild man? Ethan, do you use your eyes just to vent, and your brain to store shit? I'll tell you this, every single thing you did to hurt Sophia, I will make you pay for. Let him go. If you hit someone, I'll call the police. Sophia, stop them, now. Even if you've been with another man, Ethan is still your husband. Are you just going to stand there and watch? Bella fussed beside us, twisting her slender waist and clinging to my brother's arm as if to protect Ethan with all her might. Ethan's eyes reddened with anger and, ignoring the setting, he loudly confronted me. Was that bastard in your belly his? Don't tell me the 7 bastards I dealt with were all his. I was so furious I slapped Ethan across the face. My whole body trembled from the rage, and tears spilled out uncontrollably. Ethan, you make me sick. You're blind and deluded, not worth me giving you even a little. Let's get a divorce. If you refuse, I'll sue. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I'll get it done. Ethan raised his hand in fury, but it hovered without falling. His fingers trembled as he pointed at my nose. If you want a divorce so badly, I'll give you one, a woman without a uterus, who would want you. No sooner had he spoken than his brother pinned him to the ground and beat him until the security guards intervened and stopped it. Before Ethan stumbled away in disgrace, he angrily signed the divorce papers. With a bruised, swollen cheek he looked at me. Since we're divorced, take your things, get them out of my sight. Back home, I signed the divorce agreement, put it into a file folder, and delivered it to the receptionist at Ethan's company. Then I handed over the room key and the spare card Ethan had given me. Ethan watched the items I left at the front desk with agitation. When he saw the video, his hands began to shake uncontrollably and he overturned the documents on his desk. Dig up the earth if you have to, find her for me. At that moment the secretary burst in, flustered. Mr. Ethan, it's bad, Mrs. S. calls won't go through. I heard she already boarded a plane abroad. Ethan frowned, waved his hand, and then called me on his personal phone. At that time I was on a plane to Chicago. My phone had been turned off, I had slept for hours under a thin blanket. After landing, I turned my phone on and the flood of notifications made my palm go numb. They were all missed calls from Ethan, and messages too. It's too noisy. Since you've decided to forget the past, make this person disappear from your life completely. My brother dragged my suitcase and put his arm around my shoulders. I forced a bitter smile, deleted every message and missed call until my phone was clean, and blocked Ethan. My brother smiled in satisfaction. Sister, may you be reborn. Tonight I'll take you somewhere fun, this place is famous for its rich bar and music culture. I'll show you what it's like. Although the journey was tiring, it was nothing compared to the sour, stifling ache in my chest. It was better to relax properly. That night I wore my favorite black slip dress, wild and alluring. After I was with Ethan I never wore such revealing clothes again. He used to say that this version of me was only allowed to appear before his eyes. But later, when I stood in front of him dressed like that, he couldn't even be bothered to look. My brother let out an excited whistle at my side, lavish with praise. Sis, you look beautiful in that dress, you'll surely shine tonight. At Green Mill, my brother and I sat in the farthest corner enjoying the jazz. Not far from us, someone waved at him. What a surprise to run into an acquaintance here. I told my brother to go enjoy himself with his friend and sat alone in the corner sipping my drink. Lost in it, I didn't notice someone beside me secretly taking pictures. At that moment a handsome blonde, blue-eyed guy sat next to me, an obvious pickup attempt. Unfortunately, I had no energy to entertain anyone's interest. Just as I declined the drink he offered and stepped outside for some air, an unfamiliar call came in. The number was from back home. I hung up, but it called again immediately. When I answered, Ethan's low, heavy voice came through. Sophia, you signed the divorce papers and then run off abroad with another man. so quick you even go to a bar with him. Aren't you afraid he'll sell you? Are you in such a hurry to leave me? We're already divorced, what I do has nothing to do with you. Ethan, you don't need to waste phone credit on me. After I said that, there was a long silence on the other end, broken only by Ethan's heavy breathing. Chicago was fun, huh? If my friend hadn't sent me that photo of you drinking with another man at night, I wouldn't even have known you sneaked abroad behind my back. We haven't even filed the divorce certificate, so it doesn't count as divorced. Sophia, you call me disgusting, you're even more disgusting. Listening to Ethan, my hand holding the phone trembled with anger, and faintly through the line I heard a baby call Daddy. It hit me then, Ethan had murdered my child himself so that that child could legitimately inherit his wealth. Now, with Bella having brought her child into the house, the family of 3 was finally reunited. I gave a bitter laugh. Same as I said before, what I do has nothing to do with you. Then I hung up on him and pulled out the SIM card, tossing it into the trash beside me. Cutting off all contact with home, I could only chat with friends through my email. Ethan stood frozen where I'd hung up, while Bella, teasing their son, snorted in derision. How amusing, she said. Sophia only just signed the divorce papers and already ran off with her lover, she must have planned this in advance. Ethan, I bet all that show of loving you was just to protect the child in her belly. If she'd let some other man's seed be discovered by you, everything would have been ruined. Luckily you found out early, or she would have taken all your assets. Now, losing her womb serves her right. I want to see which man wouldn't want his own child, let her be the one to suffer. Ethan said nothing. His hand was balled into a tight fist as he stared hard at the divorce agreement before him, the house keys, and that black card. He had thought Sophia would be reluctant to sign, that she was only trying to make him care for her, that she couldn't bear to leave. He never expected she'd hand over the only connection they had, the supplementary card, along with the divorce papers. Back when the company was just taking off and he was exhausted from working long nights, even sleeping at the office for days, Sophia never complained. She cooked 3 meals a day and personally delivered them to him. Later, when the company was almost on the brink of collapse, a large overseas order brought it back from the dead. Slowly it got back on track, and I got my first black card in life. Excited, I handed the supplementary card to Sophia. Although at that time I still resented her for hurting my sister, people are only human, and my heart gradually warmed toward this woman. Yet now, knowing full well how despicable she was, having reached the point of divorce, I still couldn't stop feeling sad, my chest felt tight with unease. Just then, an old friend called to remind him to bring his wife to the class reunion the next day. I was abroad when my close friend Wendy rang, inviting me to join the reunion. She was shocked to hear that Ethan and I had divorced. When Ethan appeared at the reunion with Bella, Wendy started a video call to me. Once it connected, she put the phone in a corner so I could watch. I could clearly see the shock in their eyes and saw Bella with her hand on Ethan's arm. Everyone present tacitly avoided saying my name. The moment Wendy spotted Bella, disgust showed openly in her face. The classmates were getting along well over the meal. After a few rounds of drinks, many were tipsy. Wendy couldn't control her emotions and walked up to Ethan. There was nothing I could do from my side of the video. I could only watch the farce unfold. You divorced Sophia? You'll regret it. How could you pick a woman like that? Ethan, you've really lost your sight. Ethan frowned as he listened to Wendy, irritably angry. Bella was his woman now. What she was doing was practically slapping him in the face. Even as classmates, there was no need to preserve each other's dignity like that. Wendy, we were classmates, don't be so harsh. You don't know what happened between us, so there's no need to judge other people's lives, Ethan said as his face hardened. Wendy suddenly laughed. What are you laughing at, Wendy? For old time's sake, we don't want things to get ugly with you. You want to stand up for Sophia, but do you know she's been pregnant 7 times by other men? She just signed the divorce papers and ran off abroad with one of those men. Honestly, Ethan would be the one regretting it if he didn't divorce her. Bella, beside them, deliberately raised her voice as she repeated those ugly truths. Maybe the alcohol was getting to him. Ethan's emotions were unsteady. Wendy, you, Sophia and Bella were all high school classmates. You know, my sister was pushed down the stairs by her. I set aside my grudges and married her, and she betrayed me for all these years. So if you don't know the truth, don't come here to accuse me and make a fool of yourself. Wendy stood and pointed at Ethan's nose, laughing even more wildly. His arm was held tight by Bella, who patted his hand consolingly. Bella, don't be afraid, I've got this. Ethan only stared at Wendy, ignoring Bella's pale, anxious face. The other classmates in the private room went silent at the commotion and turned to look at them, their eyes full of sympathy for Ethan. But Ethan didn't want to be surrounded by so many people and wanted to get Bella out of there quickly. This was humiliating. Stop. Ethan, I'll tell you, it wasn't Sophia who pushed your sister. You saw Sophia standing at the front, but she was only trying to reach forward and grab your sister. She almost fell herself. The person who actually killed your sister is right beside you. I was terrified back then and hiding in the far corner of the top floor reading, but I saw the whole thing. It was Bella who pushed your sister down the stairs. Hearing that, Bella beside her went deathly pale, panicking as she shouted, "It wasn't me, you mad dog, stop biting people." Did Sophia teach you to say this? Back then she was picked up every week by an old man. She's trash. A woman kept by an old man can't be anything decent. Including you, she's your friend, but you're no better. Old man? Bella, do you think that because Sophia's father died there are no other relatives? The person who picked Sophia up every week was her own uncle. You open your mouth and spew nothing but filth, making up vile lies. Ethan was stunned into silence by Wendy's words, his mind blank. Watching Bella flail in panic trying to explain for him, it looked as if her frantic defense only served to prove Wendy right. Back then, he had deliberately gotten close to Sophia in college, and Bella had been introduced as a friend of a friend. She knew he harbored hatred toward Sophia, so she told him the story about her being kept by some wild man. At the time, he believed it and held on to that belief for years. That completely destroyed Ethan's earlier suspicion that someone else might have pushed his sister down the stairs. Shaken and bewildered, Bella's face went ashen, tears welled in her eyes as she tried to win Ethan's sympathy. It's not like that, Ethan, I never did those things. Wendy is slandering me. You have to stand up for me. Ethan seemed to find a trace of instinct, his eyes vacant as he looked at Bella, his voice gentle but utterly devoid of feeling. Be good, tell the truth. Did you push my sister down the stairs back then? It's okay if you don't want to say, I will have people investigate. If the investigation turns up results different from what you tell me, I still won't let you off. Ethan could clearly feel Bella's body trembling violently. She laughed in fear and despair. So Wendy's words had been true. I had been deceived by Bella all these years, had hurt such a good person with my own hands for so long, had even terminated 7 of my own children. The irony was unbearable. I didn't do it on purpose, Ethan, I never meant to hurt your sister, but she seemed to have something against me back then. She was going to push me down the stairs, and accidentally she missed a step and fell. Yes, I didn't push her, she fell by herself. Really, Ethan, you have to believe me. Nonsense. I didn't hear clearly what you said that day, but I heard that my sister seemed to have found out some secret of yours, and you got so furious that you pushed her down the stairs. Ethan looked at Bella in despair, gripping her arm so hard it nearly drew blood. Is what she said true? What secret of yours was worth my sister paying with her life? How could you be so heartless, Bella? You really make me feel like a joke, living all these years beside a devil and not realizing it, and you even drove away the one I loved most. He broke down into self-mockery, his head dizzy with fury. Wendy's words completely shattered Bella. She shoved the bottle on the table to the floor with a furious sweep and stormed out of the private room. The concert ended like a farce. Wendy's eyes were slightly red as she came to the phone, looking at me with a face full of grievance. Sophia, do you think I'd make a fuss for no reason? I'm just so angry. Do you think Ethan will come after you? I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. No, it's not possible. After all, he and I no longer have any relationship, all those past misunderstandings were cleared up today, and he has even less reason to come after me. While Wendy and I were chatting, Ethan, who had gone outside, received a message from Bella, each word dripping with vicious malice. Ethan, welcome to the AIDS Club. His vision seemed to blur. When he made out those words his hands trembled uncontrollably. His body felt frozen like a fish, unable to move, his heartbeat quickening, and fear washed over him in an instant. A few days later, the CDC called. Mr. Ethan, your test results came back HIV positive. But don't overthink it, if you take your medicine and stick to treatment on schedule, the outcomes can be quite good. Ethan dropped the phone in despair. The days of waiting had drained him. He knew he had a fever but refused to admit it. Until now, his life felt as if it had been sentenced to death. Tears welled up as he remembered the investigators' report the secretary had told him about yesterday. The man who showed up at the restaurant was actually Sophia's brother. He had been misunderstanding Sophia all along. Ethan sank to the carpet and, utterly despondent, stared at the offline Bubu avatar on the computer screen. To adapt to life abroad, my circadian rhythm had finally settled, but my brother kept taking me places for all kinds of reasons. Chicago is beautiful, yet no matter what I did, there felt like a hollow in my heart. That day I received an email in my inbox, from Ethan. I'm sorry, Sophia. It's my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. I should have investigated what happened back then instead of blindly believing that venomous woman Bella. Sophia, I know I did something so stupid that I have no right to say anything to win you back. I only hope you'll go to the hospital and check your health. I stared at the last line of Ethan's email in confusion and replied asking why. That woman Bella has AIDS. I was also set up by her. It was probably about a year ago that she discovered she had the disease and secretly went around looking for men. So I hope you'll get tested. I read Ethan's message over and over, my hands trembling as I snapped my laptop shut. Although Ethan and I had been intimate only once that year and that resulted in the pregnancy, the chance of infection could still be high after so long. I hurried to a pharmacy to buy a self-test kit. Opening my eyes with anxiety, I found it was negative and felt a rush of relief. To be more certain, I still made an appointment at the hospital. A few days later the results made me feel lucky. Ethan called me from an unfamiliar number. His voice over the phone was weak and hoarse. I told him my result, and he visibly relaxed, choking up as he said, "Good, that's great, Sophia. It's my fault, I'm sorry. I destroyed our marriage with my own hands, ruined the happy family we could have had." Ethan started crying as he spoke. Even though I had been hurt all over by him, hearing Ethan's sobs made my heart ache as if it were being twisted. I took a deep breath, told him to take good care of himself, and hung up. After signing the divorce papers I needed to return to the country to collect the divorce certificate. Only then would my marriage to Ethan be truly over. On the day I returned, I refused my brother's company and went alone back to the place that had broken my heart. A month later, my whole life had turned upside down. As soon as I got off the plane I went straight to the entrance of the Civil Affairs office, and seeing Ethan again startled me. He looked pale and wasted, his face gaunt, eyes hollow, like an elderly man at death's door, who could be blown over by a gust of wind. He walked slowly up to me and stopped about a meter away, his whole body trembling, eyes brimming with tears. Ethan's expression was a mixture of agitation and awkwardness. "Long time no see, shall we go inside?" he said, forcing a smile that looked stiff and strained. It had only been a little over a month, yet this man seemed utterly condemned. "How have you been lately?" Ethan hesitated, fidgeting with the hem of his clothes. "Pretty good. I went to see a doctor on my own, taking medication," I said, nodding, my eyes rimmed with red, and I stepped into the Civil Affairs office ahead of him. We got the divorce certificate quickly. Throughout the process, Ethan listened politely to the staff's instructions and didn't say a word. It wasn't until we were about to part that the noise of traffic on the street reached us. With a thud, Ethan suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. His eyes were full of remorse and despair, bloodshot as he looked at me. Tears slid down like beads on a broken string. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I deserve this outcome. I've wronged you, I don't ask for your forgiveness. I know you hate me, I've ruined you and made you utterly despair of marriage. But I still want to ask you one last thing, may I?" Seeing him like this felt like my heart was being squeezed. "What is it?" "This is a deed transfer agreement. That villa, originally it was in your name. Now that we are divorced, could you return it to me?" I stared at Ethan with a mixture of astonishment and incomprehension. The little sympathy and pain I had felt for him were completely obliterated in that moment. I ground my teeth in anger, baffled as to why he hadn't brought this up during the divorce. Why wait until after we'd signed the papers? "Fine, when do we sign?" "Now," he said. With that, Ethan stood, took a file folder from his arms, and the page after page of information to fill out irritated me. I felt a little sullen. How could a single property agreement require so many places for signatures? After signing my name for the last time, Ethan broke into a pleased smile. His arm trembled slightly as he put the documents back into the folder. I cast him a glance and turned away without another word. Soon after, I received a message from Ethan. "Sophia, I can't walk the rest of the road with you. Wherever you go, I wish you happiness." I didn't reply. Now that the divorce was final, there was no need for any further contact. I permanently blocked that number, including his email. Ethan clutched the document to his chest, watching the retreating figure, smiling through his tears. Then he dialed the number he had come to hate to his bones. I returned to my house, planning to go abroad to see my uncle in a few days. Before leaving, I contacted my best friend Wendy. When she learned that Ethan and I were completely over, Wendy visibly exhaled in relief. "You have no idea how ugly Ethan looked after that party. He almost strangled Bella right then and there." I was terrified. Bella admitted it, the child wasn't Ethan's either. "Serves him right. He cheated on you, and in the end the other woman humiliated him. What goes around comes around, it's his punishment." I frowned slightly. I hadn't expected things to unfold like this. Then I let out a calm laugh and drained the glass. "We're done. There's no connection between us anymore. Let's just look forward. As for Ethan, he's been wiped from my life. Everything back home had been taken care of, and on the day I left the flight was delayed for an hour. Just as I was about to listen to music to pass the time, I got a call from Wendy. "Sophia, Ethan's in trouble." My heart dropped and I sat up straight. "What happened?" "It turns out he contracted AIDS. Bella infected him. After Bella disappeared, she kept going to shady places and maliciously spreading it. Ethan reported her, and when the police came to take her away, Bella broke free and stabbed Ethan in the heart." My phone nearly slipped from my hand when I heard that. I asked Wendy nervously, "Do you know which hospital he's being treated at?" "Treated? The news says he died on the spot. There wasn't even time to resuscitate him. The knife went into his heart and Bella pulled it out again. It was clearly meant to kill him." My lips trembled and tears streamed down uncontrollably. After hanging up, my mind went blank. I sat dazed in the chair, everything a blur, and the thought of Ethan leaving in that way sent sharp pangs through my chest. Just then, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Ethan's entrusted law firm. I hadn't expected Ethan to leave all his property to me. It seemed he had prepared for this day long ago. When I heard my name on the property transfer agreement, I suddenly remembered that day at the Civil Affairs office entrance, the housing transfer papers he had made me sign. I let out a bitter laugh and cried, so that was it. I gripped the phone tightly, my whole body trembling as I fought to suppress the grief tearing me apart. My mother-in-law raged on the scene for a long time, finally fainting. But through her curses I learned that when she found out Ethan had AIDS, she had driven him out. When he needed her most, she had pushed him away herself. With Ethan's inheritance I bought him a plot of land, giving him some final dignity. I donated the rest to charity. After selling my house back home, I had nothing left to hold me. Bubu was gone, the home was gone, Bella was imprisoned, everything had settled into dust. Life has no turning back, using up a lifetime, all that remains in retrospect is bitterness.